Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. I just wanted to, I work for Derwent in marketing, and I just wanted to make an exciting announcement. So we're doing something new in today's class, and I wanted to let you know that we're going to choose one winner from Facebook and one winner from Instagram. And all you need to do to enter this contest is I will include a link where we talked about today's class. We'd just love for you to go in and comment how you felt about the class, what you really liked, or maybe just share with us, what you created today. And then you can enter for a chance to win a ColourSoft 72. So we're super excited. This is what Lindsay is going to be using today. I don't know if she's using all the colors from the 72 or maybe it's the 36, but we were really excited to be able to give away 2 sets of ColourSoft. So the deadline to enter is going to be 5 p.m. Central Time tonight, and I will go ahead and post the links of where you can find those posts in Instagram and Facebook. So again, we'll choose one winner from each platform. So no need to enter in both, just whatever social platform you're most comfortable with. If you could just go in and comment, we would love that. So thank you. Now I'll turn it over to Lindsay.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Molly. Thank you, Hinema, for the wonderful introduction. I am so excited to paint with you today, or I guess, do you call it painting or coloring when you're using colored pencil? I don't know. It's vibrant and beautiful, and I'm going to call it painting, I guess. We're going to use a selection from the 72 set of Derwents, like Molly mentioned, but here's a tip to keep your artwork looking really professional. Limit your colors. So even though you got 72 colors in that box, limit it to about a dozen, and your work is going to look so much more polished and refined and put together. So without further ado, I'm going to switch my camera over so you can see my workspace, and we're going to get jumping right into this project because we only have an hour and I want to make sure we can get these done. All right, so I've got my supplies laid out here. I'll be using a white paint pen and a black paint pen for doing some outlining at the end. If you don't have that and you have a like an ultra fine black marker or a white gel pen, you could always substitute those. And if you don't have these exact color pencils, get something that's close. Any non-water soluble pencil should work pretty well for this. We're going to start off with probably the easiest one, and that would be the mistletoe here. And I asked you before the class in several posts on social media if you could prepare by getting the pattern onto your wood slices. And I went ahead and transferred mine with graphite paper, and then I outlined it just so I could see it and you could see it a little bit better on camera. I'm going to begin by taking you can use white if you don't have this color, but this is aqua white, which is a very, very pale aqua. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to color in the berries. Now, this technique here, where I just work in little circles, this is going to help me get some really good coverage. But honestly, you don't have to be too picky on these wood slices to get really good results. However, if you are doing this project on maybe some craft cardstock because you want to paint a bunch of these up and then use them in your holiday cards, you want to do those little circles because that's going to give you a really nice uniform coverage. The reason I'm using ColourSoft pencils today is because they're wax-based. And you may have wondered why some pencils say they're oil-based and some pencils say they're wax-based. Well, what's the difference? Well, both pencils will have both ingredients in them, and they'll call them a wax-based pencil if they have more wax, and they'll call them an oil-based pencil if they have more oil. Pencils with a higher concentration of wax tend to be a little bit more opaque, so they stand up a little bit better when you're using them on a colored surface, kind of like the colored surface of our wood slices. Now I've got some sea green, which is a pretty turquoise color. Just add a little bit of shading around the edges of my berries here to make them feel a little bit rounder. You don't need very much pressure at all. And that's another reason I wanted to use these ColourSoft pencils, is because I know a lot of my students struggle with arthritis and have a hard time bearing down firmly on pencils that have a harder lead. This will not give you any trouble because you just need a little bit of pressure to get a really nice color payoff. The ChromaFlow pencils are also very similar, so if you have those, they're going to give you the same results. Now I'm going to go back to that first color I used, and I'm going to layer over this, and it's going to make that turquoise become smoother, and it's going to make the berries kind of glow a little bit. I also wanted to mention, if you have any questions as we're working today, you can type it in the chat and Molly will hop on and relay those questions to me. So we can make sure nobody's confused during this process.
Hey,
You'll use
Lindsay,
a
if
little
you
more
just,
pressure when you do
hey,
this.
Lindsay, it's Molly. Just,
Yep.
Do you mind repeating the colors you're using?
Sure. I just used aqua white and then I used sea green. I've been going back and forth. And see, you get a nice blend. I'm just using a little bit more pressure for this. Now for a highlight, we'll take white and just add it to the middle. Now white is generally going to be your most finicky pencil. It can be the one that wants to break on you the most. It's just the softest pencil that you have usually. So if you run into issues where your white pencil wants to break, you can always use a craft knife to sharpen it. And a lot of times that's a little more gentle than a regular sharpener. And that's how we do the berries. You can use this technique on any sort of round object that you're trying to draw and have it look rounded. Like maybe you're doing maybe a Christmas, maybe you love this idea and you're going to get like a cheese box and draw Santa Claus and color Santa Claus, and you want his cheeks to be nice and round. Use those same techniques, just use 3 different shades of the skin tone you're using and you'll get that same effect. So it's a wonderful technique to know. Now we're going to go in with Lincoln green, which is kind of like an olive green color, and we're going to do a light coating on all of our mistletoe leaves. Just go for a nice even coating here. You don't want to put too much color down on your first layer, because what can happen is you can clog the tooth of your surface and then it's hard to layer more on top. So as long as you just put like a light even layer, you can go over it with other colors and adjust. And that's really handy if you don't have very many colors of colored pencil, because if you can keep layering up other colors, you can keep mixing colors to get just what you want. So if you have a 12 set of colors, you can use that 12 set of colors and layer them up to get exactly the shade that you want to get. It's fun to have that 72 set, but if you don't have the 72 set, you definitely shouldn't feel like you can't complete the projects that you want to complete. Another fun idea, if you're a rubber stamper, you can take rubber stamps and a permanent black ink and stamp on the coasters. And that's really fun if you're doing a lot, like you're making sets for people for Christmas. That way you can get a lot done in a little bit of time. This color is dark green, and we're going to go around the edges, and that's going to give us a little bit of shading, and it's going to help them make them look a little 3-dimensional. When you're choosing rubber stamps to use on wood surfaces or anything that's not perfectly smooth and flat, you want to choose the clear stamps, and you want to choose designs that are not really detailed. So if you would say a poinsettia that had outline artwork, that's going to work a lot better than like a photo or a stamp that's comprised of a bunch of little dots. And the clear stamps work better than the rubber stamps because they squish and they'll get in between any little texture that's on your, any hills and valleys of texture that's on your wooden coasters, or even like watercolor paper if you wanted to watercolor or use watercolor pencils. I recommend keeping a little dish or a tray or something handy when you're working with colored pencils, so that you can just keep the colors you're using, because if you're putting them back into your box every time with all the other colors, it's really easy to grab the wrong shade, and then your picture will look a little kind of discordant because you'll have some colors there that don't really match, and it can make it look a little bit amateurish. That's why I said the keeping to a limited palette, like choosing a dozen colors and using those throughout, will give you a more polished look when you're done. I'm going to to take a little bit of brown. I've got this tone right here. This is called Pimento. It's kind of a reddish brown. I'm going to put a little bit into the right over the green in my stems and bring it down a little bit under the bow. I also don't recommend sharpening your pencils quite as pointy as I have them here because they are such a soft lead. The tips can snap off pretty easily, especially on a surface like wood that's pretty rugged. Now you can choose whatever light green you like. I think I'll go with this yellow green because it's got a nice kind of soft sap green color. And I'm going to use this color to blend my other colors together. So I'm just going to color kind of firmly over the leaves and smooth out that color that's underneath. Now you're not pushing so hard that your wrists hurt. This is when I say firmly, I mean I'm coloring with a little bit of force, but not much. If you're using a harder pencil, you may find that you struggle a bit to lay down the color that you want, and you may have to give a little more pressure. And sadly, I think sometimes just choosing the wrong pencil can make people frustrated and give up the medium. Like there's a set of pencils that Derwent makes that are beautiful and I really like them, but they're really hard. They're called their Pro Color. They are beautiful on sanded paper, but on regular paper, they can take a lot of force to blend and layer. If you love to do a lot of layers, there's not a better pencil for you. But if you have any wrist or strength issues, that could give you some trouble. But choosing something like ChromaFlow or the ColourSoft or even Derwent Lightfast, those are softer and they will be so much nicer to work with if you have any strength issues. I want to brighten these up a little bit. I'm going to go with this nice bright green. This is called light green. And just in the centers, oops, I lost the tip there because I sharpened it too much. I'm just going to give it a little bit of color in the center to perk it up. And then I'm going to go back around the edges with my dark green again. Something else you can do if you are having trouble getting like a shadow on a color, if it's just not sticking or showing up, is to use an opposite color. So if you don't have very many pencils and you're doing this at home and it's not giving you that punch of color you want, you could use like a crimson red or even a purpley reddish color and go around the edges, and that red pigment will make the green look darker as long as you go with a cold red. And that's another great way that you can get some nice shadows if you don't have a lot of colors. Actually, using fewer colors makes you a better artist too. So if you have those smaller sets, you'll learn faster because you'll have to be creative to get all those colors you want. All right, now we're going to move on to the bow. Now I know it looks a little fuzzy because we don't have our outlining yet. So, I'm actually going to put that like that because I think I had a little glare. I think that's a little easier to see. We're going to move on to our red, and I'm going to start in with my deepest shadows, and I am using Cranberry for that. Such a pretty color. And I'm going to start in with a little divot on the right side first. Very little pressure. I sharpen this really sharp, so I want to make sure I don't break it. So I'm using very little pressure. But you can see how much color is coming out with that. Do a little bit on the button in the center. And then we're going to do some over here. I like to put my darks in first because sometimes with white pencils and lighter colors being really soft, they can gobble up the tooth of your project really quickly. And then it's hard to lay other colors on top. So if I know I want something to be rich and dark, I will go ahead and put those darker colors in first. So the lighter tones don't take the tooth of the paper away and get it too light. Let's see, a little bit of shadow up here too. So this is a satin ribbon, so I want to get that sheen, and that's why I need all these darks. Might not make sense why I'm putting shadow up here, but it's just to kind of get that sheen when we go and put our darks in there. Don't forget, you can turn your artwork around so that you can comfortably approach it, especially something small like this. And do little circles and it'll be easy to cover up that wood grain. If you rubber stamp a design to color, you still might want to go over it with a fine liner when you're done, because your pencils are a little bit opaque with some of the colors and you might feel the need to outline it again. That's why I don't start off using my pens, because it could be a little sloppy looking if I drew this on with a paint pen or a fine liner and then went over it and had to redraw it. So I try to do that at the end. I just think it's better chance of getting a neater impression that way. But if you're stamping, you can just kind of go touch up with a pen if you need to. All right, now we're going to go to kind of a coral color. This is kind of our mid-tone. This is called blush pink. And I'm just going to go and put a really light coating over the remainder of the areas here. I have all the colors out from all my coasters, so I tend to just use a color from project to project. You don't have to have this many shades of red if you don't have them. It's not a big of a deal, but I used it in that one. So I'm like, well, I want to use it in this one too, because then all my coasters will look nice together on the table or ornaments on the tree. All right, now I'm going to go in with deep red, which is kind of like your classic Christmas red. And I'm going to start blending. And it's going to brighten up that darker red. So we'll keep that value intensity. And value is simply how dark something is or how light something is. We're going to keep that value. We're going to bump up the saturation. And saturation is how light or dark something is. So this will give us that more colorful red that's still nice and deep. And you're filling the tooth. So we don't want to see the wood grain underneath so much. We want to fill that tooth right up so we get a nice, fairly solid coverage. And we're going to go right over any of those darker areas and just kind of let the color blend in over the adjacent colors.
Hey, Lindsay, a couple people need to drop off early and they were asking how you might seal this at the end. So
sure,
talking to that, even though I know you'll cover it at the end.
Yeah, what I would recommend doing is the easiest and probably best way to do it would be to take it outside and hit it with some spray sealer. And I'd probably go with like a matte spray sealer. And you could use, I would actually use an acrylic just because this is your regular oil-based varnish might dissolve your pencil a little bit. So I would go with like a polyacrylic, either a brush on or a spray on, or you could actually rub this with some Dorland's wax or some furniture wax, or even some like home decor wax. If you have any of those chalk paint finishes, home decor wax would work really well on that. Anything to just give it a little bit of a little protection. Or for that matter, you could actually just go over it with a piece of paraffin wax and rub it down with some paraffin wax if you want to. So yeah, it's completely up to you. And honestly, these kind of seal themselves. The pencil is going to seal itself. So the only thing you'd really want to be sealing would be the raw wood there. So if you ended up covering everything with pencil, I think it'd actually be okay. But I'd probably use polyacrylic. Yeah.
When you go back to the red, do you mind sharing the number of like the number that's on the red color?
Sure. Deep red or the cranberry is C150.
Okay.
And the corally color was blush pink, C180. And the deep red is C130. Now I'm just using some white, which is C720, and I'm going in and putting in my brightest highlights. And you want to do this pretty firmly, not enough to break the pencil, obviously, but you do want to put some white down there. And then we're going to go back to our pink. We're going to blend from the white onto the red with the pink. Now I'll show the fine lining technique with this one, but the other ones I'll have you do the fine lining at home on your own because it's the exact same thing on each of the coasters, but that way you'll know how to finish it off. And remember, there will be a replay on michaels.com in the past classes section or on their YouTube channel tomorrow. So you will be able to go back if you need to see anything again, or if you want to follow along and pause as you go. So a little bit firmer pressure when we're blending into from the white into the red with that pinkish color. We're going to go back to our deep red. Give it one more coat on the darker areas and a little bit of pressure so we can blend it, get it nice and rich colored. When you do seal your coasters, if you want to, you can always take a scrap of wood and test out some different color. Just swatch out your colors and then spray them with the different varnishes you have on hand already and see what works best. You know, some might make them bleed and then some won't. So just choose whatever seems to react best with your color pencils. A light coat, if you do a light coat and then let it dry and do another light coat, you're probably going to be fine with just about anything though. Okay. Okay, now this looks kind of fuzzy right now because we don't have our outlining. When you choose a pen to do your outlining, you want to make sure you get something that is not super fine. So if you have like one of those, you know, fine liners, it's like a 0.005 or even like a 0.01, those are going to be a little too fine and they're going to get kind of torn up by the texture on this wood. So you want to get something that's like at least a 0.5. I think like a 0.7 works really well, or even a 1 millimeter. They're just a little bit more, they're a little bit thicker. With these paint pens, the ink flows nicely and then you don't have to, I don't know, feel like you're dragging a felt tip everywhere. Just get something that's not too delicate because otherwise, that might be the one and only project you use it on because it can get ruined pretty easily. And I like a plastic tipped nib for something like this just because it's more resilient than a felt tip. But if you have a felt tip, if you make sure it's like a 1 millimeter, and then it shouldn't get too torn up. And you're just outlining, that's all there is to it. Like I said, if you rubber stamped, you might not need to do this step, or you could just kind of go and touch up where it needs to be. Or you can actually do it in a really light colored ink, and then you could come back and do your fine lining at the end, like we're doing here. You could use a like an ultrafine Sharpie, but scribble off the nib every so often, every like, oh, I don't know, every 30 seconds or so, because alcohol breaks down the waxes and it will clog up the nib. So you'll need to make sure you remove that or it's going to stop working. And that's all there is to that. Make sure you cap up your pen so that it's not, it doesn't dry out. Now, one other little touch that I like to do, and if you don't have a white paint pen, you can use a white gel pen, but there's actually a set that has a black and white pen. I saw it on michaels.com. It is by Derwent, so you can find that there if you don't have either and you want to get them both in one shot. And I am just going to do very, very light little marks, and I always have to test it out on my hands, and then I get paint everywhere. I go through these pretty quickly, so I run out of ink sometimes. It's like, oh, I hope I grabbed one that had plenty of ink. So they're so handy. And you can just do little like dots or just little highlights here and there. I think this marker's about empty. I swear it was working before I. I just like 2 little dots. Sometimes I think it looks kind of cute. There, it just gives a little bit of like, almost like a little bit of glisten, like it might have had a little glitter on it or something. And you can do that to any of the ones you want to, like on the wreath here. I just did a few little highlights on the leaves. On the poinsettia, I just did like here and there, just very subtle. All right, so there you've seen one soup to nuts, gone all the way through. The next one's a pretty easy one. We're going to do this wreath, and then we'll start the poinsettia, which is very repetitive. So with this, we can kind of zip around pretty quickly. We're going to start with that earthy green, the yellow green, and we're going to go through and just, you can color a little bit firmly here because we don't have a lot of room to blend. So what we're going to do is just kind of bounce around and fill in some of these leaves. I'm going to do one on every little sprig with this color green. Now see the tip on this? This is really what you want. It's kind of a blunt tip because I can work quickly. I don't have to worry about it breaking off on me. That's really nice for using the pencils on the wood. If you're using a paper, you might want it sharper and you might want to use less pressure, but with this, we're not doing a lot of layering and blending. So it's better to have the shorter tip so we have a stronger lead. So the shorter the tip, the stronger the lead. And if you struggle with your, like see that one was way too sharp. If you struggle with your lead's breaking, you may consider getting a sharpener like you might use for eyeliner. Like you can go to Ulta and get like a get an eyeliner pencil sharpener, and they'll sharpen them at a more shallow angle. So you've got more wood supporting your lead. And I do that when I have a finicky pencil. It really does help. Especially with really, really soft white ones for some reason. It's those white ones, they always want to break on you. Like this one's super strong now that I've, now that I snapped that little overly sharpened tip off of it. But you can almost lay down the pencil like paint when you've got that blunt lead. And now I'm going to go with, this one looks nice. This one isn't, I sharpened it way too sharp. This one is mid-green. You zip right through and get these done. I think this would be really cute on like, you do something like this on one of the larger wood slices that you can find, and you could plop a candle in the middle. That would be really pretty. Or even like a hurricane, like one of those hurricane, what do you call them? To protect candles, but you can, decorate them up, something like that in the center, or a bell jar on one of the large slices with this underneath it. So you just see like the wreath on the edge. I think would be really pretty. And set that in the middle of your dinner table. Now let's see. I think I'll use the same one for the little leaves that are in between. Because that dark one will stand out. And feel free to like freehand some more leaves in if you have room. And really don't have to be too fussy with these because we're going to outline them. So just kind of get the ovals in there. Have another one there because I don't feel like I have enough. And then we will go to our deep red. And we will go and put these berries in. And again, if you feel like you want more, go ahead. Another fun one to do would just be to do like brown, like wiggly, kind of like grapevine leaves, and do different shades of orange and red berries. So you have like a bittersweet wreath. And that would be really pretty for the fall, either on coasters or on a big wood slice for a centerpiece. It's a little bit bigger. Now, the each of the berries, if you put one dot of the white gel pen on them, they are going to look fantastic. And really, that's that will do the trick. Now, I think I want to have a little bit of, I want to do that grapevine effect. Let's see. I think I'll start off with this dark brown. And what I'm going to do is just kind of like, over sharpen that one too. I'm just going to kind of do some wiggly lines connecting the different elements. And then I'm going to switch to another brown. I'll go with this Pimento. And I'm going to do some more wiggly lines. And if you have a brown that you prefer, go ahead and use that brown. It doesn't have to be this brown. You can have 2 or 3 lines, whatever you feel like you have room for, whatever is going to look better with yours. And I'm going to go back to that brown, that dark brown. And I'm just going to go over some of the red ones, to the Pimento ones that are a little redder, just to tone them down a little bit because they're a little bright. All right. Now you really don't need to do much more to this because it's pretty much just outlined at this point. But if you look at your artwork and you're like, I think I want a little bit more of an earthy green, you can go in back with that Lincoln green and you can add some color here and there. I'm being a little rough. I should be a little more careful with that. If you want to tone down some of those colors a little bit or adjust them a little bit, you can. But because we put a lot of pressure on that first layer, not much is going to stick to it. Okay, so if you can go and try to adjust, you're not going to get as much adjustment as like you did with your layering here because we went in with really light layers. And of course, to finish it up, just like we did before, and I'm not going to do the whole thing here so we can get onto the poinsettia, you're just going to go through and outline each of your leaves. And I know it looks so sloppy when we were doing it, but once you get that outline in there, it looks so nice. Now I wouldn't outline the vines, I don't think. I think I would leave those just plain. You don't have to outline everything. Because otherwise, I think if you outline the vines or go over them, you're just going to lose the color because the black is going to cover up everything. But if you do those little leaves, it's going to give the little leaves a lot more shape because you can be a lot more precise with a pen versus a pencil when you're working on this surface here. So you do that for everything. And then you would just take your white pen, give a little shake. Scribble there, and just do a little dot on, and you don't need to even be particular on where you put the dot because it's round, it can catch the highlights wherever. And then I would just do very, very subtle little highlight on the leaf. Or you could even just do the dark leaves if you wanted to, that's completely up to you. But I would just finish it off like that, and then that one will be all done. And lastly, we're going to move on to our poinsettia. And we're going to start off in the center with our yellow. And this yellow is acid yellow. And I'm actually going to try to use really light pressure because I sharpened this one. I got a little crazy and I went and sharpened everything before we began, and I used my electric sharpener. I went ahead and outlined my my coaster with colored pencils after I transferred it with graphite paper, so that would have a little bit of a brighter effect. So I'm just layering up just because it's so sharp and I don't want to snap it. All right, now I'm going to grab some green, and I think I will use light green. This is number C440. And I'm just going to go around the edges with a light green. Goodness. I need a little bit darker of a color. I'm going to go with dark green. Very light pressure though, because I don't want too much pigment down there. And then I'm going to take deep red, and I'm going to put just a little dot in the center of each of the yellow florets here. Now I'm going to get my coolest green, which is the mid green. It's kind of like a bluish green. And I'm going to go in between any little spaces that I have, those little yellow flowers. And I'm also going to go between the red flowers. Or I should say the red leaves, because they're all leaves on a poinsettia. So I'm going to go through here. Any place I see an area where I think it would, there might be a leaf underneath, I'm just kind of adding that in there to add a little bit of depth. And I also am going to do the base of any of my leaves. So like I did some areas in there. I'm going to do the base part of these leaves so that we'll have a little bit of shadow to work into. Because remember, our darker colors can get gobbled up by the lighter ones really easily. Now I tend to work kind of like batch. I kind of work in batches while I'm doing this. So I'll do all my shadows together, then I'll go all, do the next stage rather than go from petal to petal. But we will have to do a couple petals individually just to make sure we have, you get to see them get all the way done. But I like kind of like bouncing it out and seeing how it looks and seeing if I need to add anything here or see if I decide I want another leaf. Okay, let's finish up some of these leaves. I'm going to go with this medium green color. This is pea green, C430. And I'm going to color over what I've already done in little circles, but with some pressure. And I'm going to bring it out towards the tip, but very little pressure at the tip. And then I'll take a really light green, it's called light green actually, C440. And I'm going to firmly color the tip of the leaf and blend it backwards. And then I'll go back in with that darker color. I'm going to add that right there. So see how we get this nice ombre effect? We've got dark to light. Hopefully that shows up in the camera really well. Another alternative you can use to transfer paper, if you don't have it, is you can take the pattern, print it out on copy paper, and rub the back of it with a pencil, just like color. Like say this is my pattern and I have it on that side and I want to print it, go out in the back of the paper and rub it with a pencil, and then you can flip that over and you can trace over it and have your design on your paper. If I forgot to mention transfer paper in the supply list, I apologize. All right, so you do that for every one of those leaves, and I'm going to start on one of the poinsettia flowers, or red leaves, I should say. And I'm going to start with that crimson red. And I'm going to start right in the center, and I'm going to just kind of draw in that middle vein. And then I am going to, and if you transferred all those little vein lines, awesome. I couldn't get mine to really show up, so I figured I would just do that when I colored it in. And this is pretty sharp, but I don't have to use a lot of pressure to put that down, to put that color down. So I'm just using a sharp pencil and not a lot of pressure. And then I'm going to use little circles to darken around that center vein. And that's going to almost make it look like it's folded up a little bit. So let's look at that one for an example, because that's a nice big one that we can see easily. We have that shadow in the center. Now I don't want to pressure it really hard because I want to be able to blend this out. And if I press really hard, like we did on our wreath, it's going to fill up the tooth of this surface, and I'm not going to be able to layer more on. So really gentle with this. Then I am going to go in with that corally color that's called Blush Pink C180. And I'm going to color in between each of those veins that I drew. And I'm not using a lot of pressure on this either. All right, now I'm going to go with that medium red. That's kind of like your classic Christmas red, the deep red. I'm going to go in and I'm going to blend those colors together a little bit. Still not a ton of pressure though. I'm coloring out from the center on either side of that middle vein. And I'm going to go around the edges a little bit as well. What I want to achieve here is the feeling of the leaf kind of folding in the center, right? And then kind of spreading out and then like curling over on the edges. And this dark on the edge is going to give us that, that appearance of a curl. Now I'm going to go back to that cranberry red, that really, really dark one. And I'm going to go back in and redefine that center vein. Redefine the veins that I sketched in. Redefine this area here where it's a little more shadowed. And back to my pink, and now with a little more pressure, I can color in each of these center sections again. I'm going to merge together all those shades of red. I don't want to see any grain. I want to see a nice kind of smooth effect here. I'll go back with the red. Let's see, is that really, okay, I just want to make sure it wasn't shiny. I had to look at the screen. A little more red here. This is the deep red. Cranberry is our darkest red. The deep red is kind of the classic red. And now I'm going to go in with white and add highlights in between each of these, in between each of the veins. So that will give us a nice shine. Make it look more three-dimensional. Now, something that you may encounter when you're using wax-based pencils is a phenomenon called wax bloom. And that's when you've put down a lot of pigment and the wax that's holding all these pigment particles together inside your pencil wants to kind of leach out of your pigment and kind of float to the surface. And if you seal your coasters, it'll go away when you seal it. But if it bothers you, what you can do is take a tissue, and I've got one right here, just a regular old Kleenex is fine. You can just take a tissue and you can very gently just buff it. And you can see you're picking up some pigment, but it will take off that it'll take off that that waxiness, and you'll actually have kind of almost a glossy shine to it. And the more you buff it, the shinier it will get. So you can actually do that to seal in your surface if you want to, but it would have to have the pencil on it somewhere. It wouldn't seal any of these areas that are raw. It's just something something to know. Just so like if you look at your artwork the next day and it looks really hazy, that's the bloom, and it'll go away when you seal it, or you can just buff it off. Here, I'm just adding a little bit more of that cranberry, that really dark color, to the center and the veins. And that's all there is to it to do each of the petals. Now, when you have a petal that's underneath another one, it's going to have some shadow on it. So if we look, we've got this petal and we got that petal, and those are both on top. They're like the first layer of our leaves, or whatever you want to, I guess they're leaves. They're our first layer. So this guy right here is in behind, so he's going to be darker. So what we're going to do is actually start in with this cranberry color, and we're going to color it pretty, I would say pretty firmly. You don't need a lot of pressure, but you want to lay down a pretty good amount of color there, because we want some shadow on that petal. And I want to have some shadow on, like a shadow being cast from that, but it's a little bit darker underneath that petal, and the shadow from being cast from this, so it's a little bit darker from this petal. And then I would go in and I would draw on my my veins and proceed the same way that we just did. If you turn your pencil as you're working, it's going to keep that a point on your tip so that you won't have to stop and resharpen. So keep that in mind as you're working. I'm just going to go right in with this blush pink. When you have a smaller space like this, you don't have to be as fussy. I pick a few of these bigger petals to be really particular about, and then the other ones I'll do pretty quickly because you know, you don't need to be so fussy with everyone. Now I'm going to use the deep red. I'm going to blend out the center vein a bit, and a little to the edges. Smaller areas you can't blend that much anyway. Go back in with a pink, and then we'll finish it up with a white. So same process, we just can do it a little faster because it's smaller, and we got our second one done. I think really having those highlights adds quite a bit of depth and makes it look really nice. And then we'll do this one here just so that you can kind of see what the cluster looks like together. And we'll start off with our cranberry color. Now again, I'll be doing this one like I did that one because it's an overlapper. Now, if you're doing this as an ornament or a gift tag, I mean, imagine how pretty this would look if you had like a present wrapped in brown paper, like butcher's paper, like craft paper, and then you just put some baker's twine on it or some jute or yarn, and then you tied on one of these ornaments. You really wouldn't need to seal it. It's completely up to you, but it will preserve it a little bit longer if you're, you know, if you're concerned. For a coaster though, where a wet drinks are going to be set on it, I would take the time to seal it. I think that would be such a pretty, and then on the, like, you can put, like, you could write on the back, you know, put baby's first Christmas or whatever you might want to put on there. You can make it completely custom. And then my pink. This is like the perfect point right here if you have to color with and blend. Then with our deep red, blend out from the center. Blend in from the edges. Going with our white. And I think with this one, I'll follow up with going over the veins again with the red, with the cranberry, because they seem to be a little bit lost. Also give that guy in back a little bit more shadow. Sometimes you'll go and adjust the other leaves after you've done a few, because then you can see what it really needs. Also, if you don't like the outlining, you don't want to do the outlining, you don't have to. All right, so there you've got our little cluster of these done, and you finish the rest of them in the exact same way. And you'll outline in the same way. And when you do highlights, I would just be, I wouldn't go crazy, like just like maybe just a little bit here and there. You definitely don't need to be, you know, you don't need to make it snowy. But one thing that's kind of nice, if you do your highlights and you put some like next to areas that are overlapping, it just kind of gives it a little bit of depth. This is overlapping that green leaf. You don't need a lot, just a little bit of and just a little bit of definition. And if you find your hand's not very steady at the end of the day, or maybe, you know, you've been coloring and you're just kind of tired, you can save your outlining for the next day, because, you know, you definitely want to have a steady hand when you do this. It's not that project to do after a pot of coffee. It's something that requires a steady hand. Just to give you an idea. Now you could even do the veins outlined if you want to. And if you used a rubber stamp, your veins probably would have the lines. And in that case, you could leave those lines the way they are, and you could even go in and just outline the perimeter of the leaves afterwards to give you an extra level of depth there. But I see we're getting close to the end of our hour together. So if you have any questions, please go ahead and pop them in the chat. I'm going to bring our finished examples in front of the camera here. Now, on both my Instagram and my blog, and also the Derwent's Instagram and Facebook, they have finished photos of these if you want to look at them. And also there's a wonderful contest that you can enter to win if you're watching the live class today. Obviously the winner will be chosen by the time it goes to the public on YouTube. But if you are watching this class live, make sure you scroll back in the chat and you look for the links where you can see Derwent's post on Facebook and Derwent's post on Instagram, so you can leave a comment about what you thought of today's class and be entered into the random drawing to win a set of 72 ColourSoft pencils. Now, I want to reiterate that I sharpened my pencils too sharp, and that's why the tips were breaking. I don't want you to think it's a flaw with a pencil. I really just shouldn't have sharpened them so pointy before working on wood. You can use these techniques to decorate cheese boxes, cigar boxes, wooden frames, anything like that that's a smooth wood. If it's rough, just go ahead and sand it down with maybe a 400 grit sandpaper, so you don't want it like glassy smooth, but you want it pretty smooth and pretty uniform so that your colored pencil will stick and you won't have like gouges or big hills and valleys to kind of work around. But I hope you found this inspiring, and I hope it encourages you to maybe make some ornaments or coasters, or try colored pencils on wood, because it's a new surface and it's fun. You can even buy cradled wooden panels. So they're like canvases, but they're all wood. And you could do a whole painting that way and hang them on the wall, and it would look really fantastic. I'm going to take a quick peek at the chat to see if there's any last minute questions, which if they've already gone by, I apologize. I'm not very good at doing two things at once. Thank you everyone for joining and for leaving your support. I appreciate it. I really enjoy doing these live classes, and I'm so glad that you took some time out of your busy day today to join and to work along. And if you finish these coasters and you want me to see, go ahead and tag me. You can @Lindsay Wyrick on Instagram. That's probably the one that I can see work the easiest. You can try tagging me on Facebook, but I don't seem to see. You could, I think you could probably tag the Frugal Crafter community on Facebook. You can tag @Derwent art_US to tag Derwent, and you can hashtag Make It with Michaels if you want to show the folks at Michaels what you worked on from today's class. I think they would all love to see it. I know I certainly would. So thanks again. I don't think there's anything else I have to add, but I appreciate you guys joining us here in painting. I know it's a busy time of year, and the fact that you took a few moments, you took an hour away from your busy day to do some art, that's a really awesome thing. So thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time, happy crafting. We'll see you later, guys. Bye.